The Road to True Success, Ethan's Journey Part 1, Dreams in the Shadows. Welcome to English Story Haven, the place where stories help you learn English and also discover how to succeed in life. Today we begin a very special journey, the Road to True Success. This story will be told in several parts. Stay with us through every chapter because each one will give you powerful lessons for both English learning and life itself. Ethan's world. Ethan was born in a place where people measured success by wealth. In his neighborhood, those who drove cars with shiny paint, wore gold watches, and lived in wide houses were considered winners. Those who had little, like Ethan's family, were often ignored, sometimes even mocked. Ethan's father was a taxi driver. Every morning, he left home before sunrise and returned long after sunset, his shirt soaked with sweat, his hands rough from steering the wheel all day. His mother sold fruits in the market, standing for hours under the burning sun. Their income was just enough for rent, food, and school fees. Their home was small. The walls were cracked and the roof leaked whenever it rained. At night, Ethan could sometimes hear his parents whispering about unpaid bills. Yet despite their struggles, his parents never stopped smiling at him. His father often said, "Ethan, we may not be rich, but remember, knowledge can change everything." Those words planted a seed in Ethan's heart. He wanted to succeed, not just for himself, but for his family. He dreamed of giving them a better life, of buying his mother a shop instead of watching her stand all day in the heat, of giving his father rest from endless taxi rides. But there was one huge obstacle standing in his way, the English problem in his school. English was the subject that separated students. The rich kids spoke it fluently, like it was their mother tongue. They read storybooks with ease, quoted famous lines, and laughed confidently during class discussions. Ethan, however, struggled. Whenever he opened his mouth, the words came out broken. His accent was heavy, his grammar shaky. Whenever he read aloud, some of his classmates giggled. He still remembered the sting of one boy whispering, "Listen. To him, he talks like a baby." The red ink on his assignments was even worse. His teacher circled mistakes in grammar, spelling, and sentence structure. "Ethan," she said once, kindly but firmly, "if you want to go far, you must improve your English. It is the language of opportunity." But Ethan already knew that. He felt it every day. English was the bridge to a better future, and he was standing on the wrong side of the river. A night of decision one evening. After another difficult day at school, Ethan sat by the small window of his room. The dim light bulb flickered above him as he held a book he could hardly understand. His mother walked in quietly with a plate of food. "You've hardly eaten today," she said softly. "I'm not hungry, Mama," Ethan replied, staring at the book. She looked at him with concern. "What's troubling you, my son?" He hesitated before answering. "I feel stupid. Everyone in class speaks English better than me. They laugh when I try. Maybe I'll never be good at it. Maybe I'll never succeed." His mother sat beside him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Ethan, remember this, nobody is born knowing everything. The greatest people you see today once struggled like you. The only difference is they did not quit." Those words touched him deeply. After she left, Ethan stared at the book again. His heart was heavy, but her words lit a small flame inside him. He whispered to himself, "I will not quit, I will fight." The first steps that night, Ethan made a decision that would change his life. He promised himself that no matter how hard it was, he would read at least one page of English every night before sleeping. Just one page. At first, it was painfully slow. Sometimes it took him an hour to finish a single page. He underlined words he didn't understand, looked them up in a worn dictionary, and wrote their meanings in a notebook. He repeated new words aloud until his tongue could say them smoothly. In the beginning, frustration nearly defeated him. Some nights he threw the book aside and muttered, "This is useless." But each time he remembered his mother's words. The only difference is they did not quit. So he picked it up again. As weeks passed, he noticed something small but powerful. He was improving. Words that once felt impossible now came easier. Sentences began to make more sense. Slowly, the laughter of his classmates no longer mattered. Because inside he knew he was growing. The spark of persistence. Ethan's father noticed the change. One morning, as he prepared to leave for work, he saw his son asleep at the desk, books scattered around him. Smiling, he whispered to his wife, "Our boy is learning to fight for his future." From that day, Ethan's persistence became part of him. He read at night, practiced speaking in front of the mirror, and even started writing small journal entries in English. They were filled with mistakes, but he didn't care. He was building habits, one step at a time. And slowly, a truth revealed itself to him. Success is not sudden. It does not arrive like lightning. It grows like a tree, quietly, steadily, through patience and persistence. Lesson from Part 1. Success begins the moment you stop running from your weakness and face it daily. English fluency doesn't come overnight. It grows from small, consistent efforts. And in life, persistence is more powerful than perfection. Teaser for Part 2. But what happens when Ethan, full of hope and effort, faces his first painful rejection? That is where the true test begins. Part 2. The first rejection, the big dream. After months of persistence, Ethan began to see small changes. His reading speed improved, his vocabulary notebook grew thick with new words, and his sentences sounded a little less broken. Hope, like a small flame, burned brighter in his heart, but Ethan's dreams were bigger than just passing exams in his small-town school. He wanted to study in the city, a place filled with opportunities, advanced education, and the promise of a better future. His father often said, "Ethan, if you can earn a scholarship, you will open a door not just for yourself, but for our whole family." The scholarship exam was famous in his town. Only the best students won it, and those who did often went on to achieve great things. Ethan dreamed of being one of them. He imagined walking through city streets, carrying books, speaking fluent English, and finally proving to everyone and to himself that he was capable. Preparation, the months before the exam, were the hardest of Ethan's life. He woke up before sunrise, often studying by candlelight when electricity failed. He read English passages aloud, repeating words until they rolled naturally off his tongue. He wrote practice essays, showing them to his teacher, who circled mistake after mistake in red ink. "Don't be discouraged," his teacher told him. "These mistakes are not failures, they are stepping stones." Ethan nodded, though his heart often sank when he saw so much red on the page. Still, he refused to stop. He told himself, "Every mistake I fix today will make me stronger tomorrow." While his classmates laughed, played cricket, or hung out after school, Ethan often stayed in the library, his head buried in grammar books and story collections. Friends teased him, saying, "Why waste your time? People like us never win those scholarships." But Ethan ignored their words. He had already learned one important truth: persistence is stronger than doubt. The day of the exam arrived at last. Ethan wore his cleanest shirt, carried sharpened pencils, and clutched his worn-out English dictionary in his bag like a lucky charm. The exam hall was filled with nervous students, all hoping for the same dream. When the papers were handed out, Ethan took a deep breath. He tackled the grammar section first, then reading comprehension, and finally the essay. He poured his heart into the essay, writing about how discipline and courage shape a person's future. When the time ended, Ethan walked out of the hall with hope glowing in his chest. For days, he replayed the exam in his mind, telling himself he had done well. At night, he even dreamed of receiving the acceptance letter, of seeing his parents' proud faces. The letter 2 weeks later, a letter arrived. Ethan's hands trembled. As he tore it open, his parents watching with anxious eyes. His eyes raced across the words, but his heart sank. "We regret to inform you." The rest of the sentence blurred as tears filled his eyes. He had failed, his mother gasped softly, covering her mouth. His father placed a hand on his shoulder, but Ethan could not look up. The paper slipped from his fingers, floating to the floor like a broken dream. That evening, Ethan locked himself in his room. He lay on his bed staring at the ceiling, his chest heavy with shame and disappointment. His mind whispered cruel thoughts. Maybe they were right. Maybe success is only for the rich. Maybe I'll never be good enough. The silence of failure for a week, Ethan barely spoke. He avoided friends, skipped meals, and refused to touch his books. His mother knocked gently on his door one night. "Ethan," she said softly, "success is not built in a single day. One failure does not mean the end." But Ethan turned his face to the wall, unable to respond. His confidence was shattered. The next night, his father came in, still wearing his taxi driver's uniform. Sitting on the edge of the bed, he looked at Ethan with tired but determined eyes. "Son," he began, "do you know what I see when my taxi breaks down?"
I don't see the end
Ethan
of the
shook his
journey.
head silently. "I see a problem that needs fixing. Sometimes the engine fails once, sometimes twice. But each time, I try again until it runs. Life is the same. Every rejection is not a wall, it is a mirror. It shows you ask what to improve. Don't be afraid of it, learn from it." Ethan swallowed hard, his father's words echoing in his heart. A mirror, not a wall. Slowly, hope flickered again. Rising again the next morning, Ethan opened his books. His hands shook, but he began again. This time, he worked not just harder, but smarter. He wrote one essay every single day, no matter how tired he was. He asked his teacher for feedback, even when it embarrassed him. He practiced speaking English with anyone who would listen. Shopkeepers, bus conductors, even strangers in the market. At first, they laughed at his accent, but he refused to stop. At night, he wrote in his journal, "I failed once, but I will not fail forever. Every mistake I fix today brings me closer to tomorrow's success." His classmates noticed the change. One of them whispered, "Why is he still trying? Didn't he already fail?" But Ethan ignored the voices, just as he had ignored them before. He had learned that the world's doubts did not matter as long as he believed in himself. The spark returns months later. Ethan applied again for the scholarship. This time, he was not just prepared for the exam, he was prepared for failure too. He knew even if he fell again, he would rise. That knowledge alone gave him strength. And when the results came, Ethan's name was on the list. He could hardly believe it. His mother cried tears of joy, his father lifted him in an embrace, and Ethan himself felt a powerful truth sink deep into his heart. Failure was never the end. It was the beginning of learning. Lesson from part 2, rejection is not the end, it is a message. In English, every mistake you make shows you what to fix. In life, every failure lights the path to your next step. Teaser for part 3. Ethan has risen after rejection. But when he finally enters the big city, will he survive among students who are stronger, richer, and more confident than him? Part 3. A stranger in the city arrived the day Ethan left for the city was both joyful and painful. His parents accompanied him to the bus station. His mother pressed a small packet of food into his hands and whispered, "Don't forget where you came from, Ethan, and don't forget why you are going." His father hugged him tightly, a rare show of emotion, and said, "You carry our hopes. With you, be strong." As the bus rumbled down the highway, Ethan stared out the window, his heart filled with dreams. He imagined tall buildings, modern classrooms, and students discussing big ideas. He promised himself that he would not waste this chance, the chance he had worked so hard to win. When the city skyline finally appeared, it was more breathtaking than he had imagined. Shiny glass towers pierced the sky, cars zoomed past in endless lines, and crowds filled the streets with noise and energy. Ethan clutched his bag tightly, feeling both excitement and fear. "This is my new world," he thought. "I must prove myself here." First impressions on his first day at the university, Ethan quickly realized how different life in the city would be. His classmates wore branded clothes, carried sleek laptops, and spoke English as though they had been born with it. They discussed novels, history, and politics with ease, quoting authors he had never even heard of. When the professor asked a question, hands shot up confidently. Voices flowed smoothly, arguments were sharp, and even jokes were clever. Ethan sat frozen in his chair. His heart raced, but his tongue refused to move. He knew some answers, but fear chained him in silence. During a group discussion, he finally gathered the courage to speak. I think the story, it shows courage and respect," he stammered. His words felt clumsy, his grammar shaky. A few students smiled politely, but others exchanged smirks. One whispered, just loud enough for him to hear, "Village boy." Heat rushed to Ethan's face. He lowered his head and stayed silent for the rest of the class. When it ended, he slipped out quickly, avoiding everyone's eyes. The weight of loneliness that evening. Ethan wandered through the city streets, neon lights flashing above him, crowds bustling all around. People laughed in cafes, friends chatted as they walked, and couples strolled hand in hand. But Ethan felt invisible, a stranger lost in a world too big for him. Back in his small dorm room, he stared at the cracked ceiling and whispered, "Maybe. My friends back home were right. Maybe I don't belong here." His chest ached with loneliness. He missed his parents, the quiet of his village, and the comfort of people who understood him. For several days, Ethan carried that heaviness. He attended classes but spoke little. He walked alone, ate alone, and studied alone. The laughter of his classmates echoed in his mind like cruel reminders of his weakness. The turning point one evening, while cleaning his desk, Ethan found the notebook he had carried from home. Inside were the words he had once written after failing his first scholarship exam. "Every rejection is not a wall, it is a mirror. It shows us what to improve." He stared at those words for a long time. Then, slowly, something inside him shifted. If this city is laughing at me, he thought, then it is showing me my weakness. And if I know my weakness, I can improve it. I will not run. With renewed determination, Ethan built a new plan, building discipline every morning. He woke at 5 while the city still slept. He bought a newspaper and read it aloud, underlining difficult words, practicing their pronunciation until his tongue grew flexible. He stood in front of the mirror, pretending he was giving a speech to an audience. At first, he stumbled, but with each day, his voice grew clearer. In the evenings, he wrote one full page in English, describing his day, his thoughts, and his struggles. His first entries were simple, sometimes filled with mistakes. But each page was a brick, slowly building his confidence. He even began to approach classmates, forcing himself into small conversations. At first they were awkward. Hello, how are you?" he stammered. Some responded kindly, others brushed him off, but each attempt was practice. Each conversation was another step forward. Small victories. Weeks passed, and slowly the results began to show. One day, during a literature class, the professor asked for an opinion on a story. Ethan raised his hand cautiously. His classmates turned in surprise, some smirking, expecting another clumsy answer. But this time, Ethan's voice was steadier. "I believe the story teaches us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to continue despite it," he said. His grammar was not perfect, but his message was clear. The professor smiled and nodded. "Well said, Ethan." For the first time, Ethan felt respect instead of ridicule. It was a small victory, but it meant everything to him. That night, he wrote in his journal, "Better is enough. Perfection is not required. Every day I only need to be better than yesterday." Reflection. Ethan realized something powerful. Success was not about being instantly fluent, instantly confident, or instantly perfect. Success was about discipline, waking up daily to fight even when noticed. He had once thought of discipline as a prison, something that took away his fun and comfort. But now he saw it differently. Discipline was a teacher, silent, strict, but endlessly patient. Every morning he rose early, every page he wrote, every conversation he attempted. All of it was discipline shaping him into the person he wanted to become. Lesson from Part 3. Success in both English and life is built on discipline. Improvement doesn't come as a gift. It is the reward of daily practice. Teaser for Part 4. But discipline always demands sacrifice. What friendships, comforts, and joys will Ethan have to give up on his road to success? The weight of sacrifice, the price of progress. Ethan's routine was strict now. He woke up before sunrise, studied English passages, practiced pronunciation, and filled page after page in his journal. His professors noticed his improvement. He answered questions more often in class, his essays carried fewer mistakes, and his confidence began to shine through. But while Ethan was growing academically, he began to feel the cost of his determination. His days were filled with books and exercises, his nights with long hours of writing. Slowly, other parts of life slipped away. His classmates invited him to join their outings. "Come with us to the movies," one said. "There's a party." "This weekend," another offered. Ethan always smiled politely but shook his head. "Sorry, I need to study." At first they insisted, but after many refusals, the invitations stopped. Soon Ethan became the boy who was always busy, always studying, never fun. While others shared stories of late-night adventures, Ethan's stories were of grammar rules and vocabulary lists. It hurt him sometimes, the loneliness. He sat in his small room, hearing laughter echoing from the streets below, wondering what it felt like to belong. Yet every time he doubted himself, he reminded his heart, the sacrifice is not for nothing. One day it will matter. A moment of doubt. One Friday evening, Ethan returned from class exhausted. He passed by a cafe where several classmates sat, laughing loudly over coffee. They spotted him and waved. "Ethan, come sit with us," one of them called. He hesitated. For a moment he wanted to join, to laugh, to feel normal. But then he thought of the unfinished essay on his desk, the vocabulary words he had promised himself to learn. He waved back with a smile and said, "Maybe next time." Inside he felt a stab of pain. He walked past the cafe, the sound of laughter echoing in his ears. By the time he reached his dorm room, his smile had faded. He sat heavily on his chair, staring at his books. For the first time, the question hit him hard. Am I giving up too much? Is this worth it? He thought of his classmates bonding, building friendships, creating memories. And here he was, alone with nothing but paper and ink. Tears blurred his eyes. He put his head on the desk and whispered, "Maybe I am wrong." Remembering the why that night, Ethan pulled out an old letter from his mother. She had written it before he left for the city. "My dear son," it read, "we know this road will be hard. But remember, every sacrifice you make is a step closer to the life you dream of. We are proud of you already. Keep walking." The words pierced his heart. He saw his father's tired face after long taxi rides, his mother's rough hands from carrying baskets of fruit. They had sacrificed all their comfort so he could study here. How could he complain about sacrificing a little fun when his parents had given up so much for him? He wiped his tears and whispered, "If they can sacrifice for me, I can sacrifice for them." Seeds of the future. From then on, Ethan began to view sacrifice differently. It was no longer a punishment, no longer a burden. It was an investment. Just as a farmer plants seeds in the ground, giving up the grain he could eat today in exchange for the harvest tomorrow, Ethan saw every moment of loneliness, every rejected invitation, every missed party as a seed. He imagined a future where those seeds would grow into trees of opportunity, where he could speak fluent English, stand confidently before others, and perhaps even lift his family from poverty. That vision gave him strength. One night he wrote in his journal, "Sacrifice is the price of growth. Today's loneliness is tomorrow's strength. If I cannot give up small pleasures, how can I gain great victories?" A test of friendship. One day, his roommate Arun confronted him. "Ethan, you're too serious. You never join us. Don't you ever get tired of all this studying?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Of course I get tired. But I have goals, Arun. If I don't work now, I may regret it forever." Arun sighed. "I respect that. But sometimes I think you're missing life." Ethan thought about those words long after Arun left the room. Was he missing life? Perhaps. But he also knew that discipline required focus, and focus required saying no to many things. It was a painful truth, but he accepted it. The quiet victory months later, Ethan noticed that while others were struggling to keep up with assignments, he was slowly pulling ahead. His essays were stronger, his English more fluent, his confidence more visible. Professors began to call on him more often. Even some classmates who once laughed now came to him for help. The same people who had once mocked his silence were beginning to respect his persistence. Ethan realized that sacrifices were slowly bearing fruit. Reflection. One evening, as he looked out his window at the glowing city lights, Ethan whispered to himself, "Yes, I am alone now. Yes, I miss out on fun. But one day this loneliness will Become strength, and this sacrifice will turn into success. He smiled softly, feeling peace in his decision. Sacrifice had not broken him, it had shaped him. Lesson from Part 4. Sacrifice is not loss. It is investment. In English, every hour you give to reading and practice becomes part of your future fluency. In life, every comfort you let go builds the foundation of your success. Teaser for Part 5. Ethan has embraced sacrifice. But the road ahead is not smooth. When life throws him even greater challenges, will his spirit survive the storm? Part 5. The storm of challenges. Life has a way of testing those who dare to dream. Just when Ethan thought he was beginning to rise, new challenges struck him like waves in a storm. Assignments piled up. His professors demanded deeper analysis, flawless grammar, and sharper thinking. Ethan spent hours writing, but when papers came back, red marks still bled across the margins. Good effort, one professor noted, but weak structure. Another wrote, ideas strong, language unclear. The hardest blow came during a class presentation. Ethan had prepared for weeks, memorizing every line. But standing before his classmates, his throat tightened, his palms sweated, and his voice cracked. Sentences tumbled out broken. Some students looked away politely. Others smirked. By the end, the professor sighed. You must practice more, Ethan. That night, Ethan walked alone in the rain. His clothes were soaked, but he hardly noticed. His heart whispered, why keep trying? Maybe this path is not for me. He thought of quitting, returning to his village, escaping the endless struggle. Yet, when he reached his room, his eyes fell on his journal. On its pages were words he had written in his darkest hours. Every rejection is not a wall, it is a mirror. It shows us what to improve. He sat down, opened his notebook, and rewrote the entire speech he had failed to deliver. Then he stood before the mirror and practiced again and again, his voice shaking at first, then steadying. Each mistake became fuel, not poison. Slowly, Ethan realized something. Challenges were not enemies. They were teachers, harsh but valuable. Just as grammar rules are confusing until practiced, life's struggles shape us only when we endure them. Lesson from Part 5. Challenges are not walls to block you. They are steps to lift you higher. In English, every difficult word you learn makes you stronger. In life, every problem you face makes you wiser. Teaser for Part 6. But after storms come breakthroughs. Will Ethan finally see the fruit of all his sacrifice and effort? Part 6. The first breakthrough. After months of storms, a ray of light finally appeared. Ethan's professors noticed small but steady changes. His essays, once marked heavily in red, now carried fewer corrections. His sentences flowed more smoothly, his vocabulary choices more precise. Even classmates began to notice his progress. One morning, his professor announced a debate competition. Ethan's stomach clenched. Memories of his failed presentation flashed. In his mind, his first thought was to avoid it. But then he remembered his father's words, every rejection is a mirror. He told himself, if I fear speaking, then this is exactly what I must face. Ethan lived in breath preparation. He read articles, researched arguments, and practiced speeches in front of the mirror. He recorded his voice and replayed it, correcting each mistake. He even asked his roommate, Arun, to listen. At first, Arun chuckled at Ethan's trembling voice, but soon he nodded with respect. You're improving, brother. Keep going. The day of the debate arrived. Ethan's heart pounded as he stood before the audience. His hands were cold, but he took a deep breath and began. At first, his voice wavered. A few students leaned forward, expecting him to stumble. But then Ethan remembered every late night, every page of notes, every sacrifice. His words steadied, his sentences sharpened, his arguments flowed. When he finished, the hall was silent for a moment, then applause filled the air. He didn't win first place, but he won something far greater. His fear was gone. Walking off the stage, Ethan felt taller than ever before. That night, he wrote in his journal, success is not about defeating others. It is about defeating fear, doubt, and weakness inside yourself. Lesson from Part 6. Breakthroughs don't come by luck. They come when you face the very thing you fear most. In English, confidence grows not from perfection, but from the courage to speak. In life, true victory is not over others, but over your own doubts. Teaser for Part 7. Ethan has tasted victory. But will success change him, or will he discover an even deeper meaning of what true success is? Part 7. The deeper meaning of success. After the debate, Ethan felt a new kind of strength. His professors smiled when he spoke, his classmates nodded when he shared ideas, and even those who once mocked him now asked for his help. For the first time, Ethan walked through the campus with his head high, but recognition brought temptation. Invitations poured in: parties, late-night outings, weekend trips. "You've proven yourself now, Ethan," one classmate said. "Relax, enjoy life a little." For a few days, Ethan was tempted. After all, hadn't he earned the right to rest? He sat at his desk one night, torn between his books and the laughter drifting through the window from outside. Then his eyes fell on his old notebook. On the first page, in his own handwriting, were the words, "Success is not free. It asks for sacrifice, discipline, and courage." Ethan closed the book and whispered, "I can't stop now. The journey isn't finished." During a short break from school, Ethan returned to his village. Walking through the familiar streets, he noticed the children playing barefoot, dusty notebooks in their hands. Some struggled with English just as he once had, hiding their mistakes behind nervous laughter. Ethan saw his younger self in them. That afternoon, under the shade of a banyan tree, Ethan gathered a group of children. He taught them simple English words: hope, dream, future. The children repeated them eagerly, their eyes shining with pride. When they laughed, it wasn't cruel laughter, but joyful discovery. As Ethan watched them, something stirred inside him. This moment of giving felt more rewarding than any applause he had ever received in the city. For the first time, he understood that success was not measured only by what you achieve for yourself, but also by what you give to others. That night, sitting by the dim light in his old room, Ethan wrote in his journal, "True success is not just comfort, wealth, or recognition. It is wisdom, respect, and the ability to lift others with you. If my journey ends with me alone at the top, then I have failed. But if it inspires even one child to rise, then I have truly succeeded." Lesson from Part 7. Success is not only about achievement, it is about impact. In English and in life, the more you share what you learn, the stronger and more valuable it becomes. Teaser for Part 8. Ethan has discovered the deeper meaning of success. But what final lesson will his journey leave for us all? Part 8. The final lesson. Years passed, and Ethan was no longer the shy boy who once trembled to speak in English. He had become confident, respected, and wise. The city, which once felt like a giant that mocked him, now welcomed him as someone who belonged, but Ethan never forgot his roots. Each time he returned to his village, children ran to greet him with their notebooks, eager to learn. Under the same banyan tree, he taught them simple English sentences, corrected their mistakes gently, and shared stories of persistence and courage. Their smiles were brighter to him than any award he could win. One evening, as the sun set and the children prepared to leave, a little boy tugged at Ethan's sleeve. "Sir," he asked so softly, "what is the secret of success?" Ethan paused. He looked at the boy's hopeful eyes, then at the faces of the other children waiting for his answer. He thought about his failures, his loneliness, the nights of sacrifice, and the victories that followed. He smiled and said, "Success is not about money or comfort. It is not about being better than others. The true secret of success is persistence, the courage to rise every time you fall, the discipline to practice every day, and the wisdom to share what you learn with others. Money can buy comfort, but it cannot buy respect or wisdom. That, my children, you must earn with your own effort." The children nodded quietly, the weight of his words sinking into their hearts. For Ethan, this was the moment he understood fully. His journey was never just about himself. It was about inspiring others to believe, to grow, and to succeed. That night, Ethan opened his old journal one last time and wrote his final words. "The road to success is not an easy path. It is long, filled with rejection, sacrifice, and struggle. But each step shapes you, each failure teaches you, Each sacrifice strengthens you. Success is not reaching the top alone. It is becoming the kind of person who helps others climb with you. Final lesson: true success is not a trophy, money, or applause. It is persistence through failure, discipline in daily practice, and the wisdom to share your strength with others. In English and in life, the greatest success is not what you achieve, but what you give.